because, as Einstein said, and we all know this, you cannot solve a problem by approaching it at the same level that you're creating it. And so when we're eating animal foods, we're cultivating a mentality of disconnectedness, of reductionism, of commodification of life, of exclusion and inequality and predation, that we're predatory, that, a strong attack that we could create in this predatory economic system. So the whole idea is to realize that our food is the key. By moving to a plant-based diet for ethical reasons, we're questioning the core of our society. In a way, it's by far the most subversive thing we can do to a culture of violence and environmental devastation, but it's positive. It's a very positive, benevolent kind of activity. Yeah.
Let me ask you something in a little bit of a different arena. You have a very vital life as a creative artist, in music, as a writer, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, the role that your own creative art, or any creative art really, has played in your evolution, your transformation, your work with animals and the planet.
Yes. Okay. I think, when people ask me about how it was I was able to write the World Peace Diet, I think there's really three things. One is the fact that I went through the excruciating experience of seeing and understanding the situation of so much suffering to animals, and studying, trying to understand it academically, really studying intellectually, and taking courses in philosophy and science and public health and anthropology and sociology, and just studying. Number two, doing quite a bit of meditation, and this has been, I think, a big core, to just quiet the mind and learn to listen to an inner intuition, an inner intuitive voice. And I think that's also been a big aspect in the third thing, which is being creative. And I've been a musician pretty much since I was a little kid. For quite a few years, I have been making my living, actually, as a pianist and a composer, and traveling around North America, playing concerts of original piano music, and with my wife Madeline, who's an artist from Switzerland, and we do exhibits of her paintings and play the piano and teach courses also in developing intuition. And I think that this has been a major blessing for me, that my father taught me to play the piano, and that I've met people in my life, my grandmother and other people who really encouraged that. And so when I play the piano, the whole idea for me is to get my mind out of the way, quiet my mind, and just allow a creative, loving presence, essentially, that is always present, I think, to come through music. And the beauty, I think, of music is that it brings everyone together. I can sit down and play the piano and let the music come through, and it doesn't matter whether people are Republicans or Democrats, or if they're young or old, or if they agree, if they're vegans or not vegans, or it doesn't matter. I mean, everybody feels their heart being touched. They feel an inspiration. There's something universal, I think, in being creative, and especially, I think, in music, which is a language that connects directly with our heart. We can't argue with a D minor chord, right? This is like, ooh, and you just feel it. But as soon as we open our mouths and start talking, we can say, well, I don't agree with that, and this and that. So to me, it's always been very important to try to connect with universal principles that virtually no one will argue with. And I think in the World Peace Diet, these universal principles are like the universal principles in music. There's universal harmonic principles of rhythm and harmony and melody when we're playing music, and we're allowing these universal principles to come through us. People just feel it. It's like we can feel it in our consciousness, and we relax and we unfold, and we just feel so much better.
When you do workshops and the lectures, you do a lot of those. Do you use the creative arts in those? Actually, in any way?
Yes. If there's a piano there, when I give a presentation, if there's a piano there, I always, if it's in decent shape, if there's a piano there, I love to begin and end with some piano music. I've also created it's like a short slideshow showing animals celebrating their lives that can go along with the music. And I think music and art and imagery are very powerful ways of helping people to move beyond merely the rational, scientific, logical dimension, because most people make deep transformation or positive change in their lives not simply from the level of rationality, logic, and science. It's more, we know this is who we are, or we have an inner positive change that comes from a deeper level.
Speaking of people making transformations, there seems to be a kind of duality in a lot of people where they feel, I really care about animals. I would never hurt an animal. I would find it reprehensible to make an animal suffer, and yet they don't or can't stop eating animal foods, and they don't want to really hear about how horrible the animal has been treated. And one of the things that was interesting is there has been some speculation that maybe eating animal food is a kind of addictive thing, and it sort of seems like perhaps this denial of what's really going on is in some way very similar to an addictive denial. So could you talk about some of these ideas and also how you think that kind of duality can be changed?
There is, I think, a lot of truth to the understanding that most people would be appalled at how animals who they are eating are treated. And most people feel that they love animals. In fact, when there are polls taken and people are asked, do you think that people who commit egregious acts of violence against animals should pay the consequences for that? 98% of the people say yes. We just, at a very deep level as human beings, do not want to see animals harmed gratuitously, that kind of cruelty of a defenseless, innocent being. And yet, 98% of the people are eating meat, dairy products, and eggs, or at least for sure dairy products and eggs. And so there's this somewhat of a split between loving animals and wanting to not harm them, and yet just eating meat and dairy and thinking that this is fine. And so I think it's true that there is a certain addiction to eating animal foods, that we're, as little children, our food in many ways comes at a deep level to symbolize that our mother loves us, our mother cares for us, our father cares for us. He barbecues, and so when they give us these foods, we maybe at a deep subconscious or unconscious level, we connect with being loved and cared for. And this is a powerful, I don't know if it's a physical addiction, it's more, I think, of a psychological deep connection. And then we also identify as a person who loves whatever it is, chicken nuggets or whatever it is, So that's our nature. But then there's a third thing. I think there's also quite a bit of evidence that animal foods are physically addictive, especially dairy products. There's casein, for example, is the primary protein in dairy products, and we do not have the enzyme to break down casein, and so the body has to go through a lot to try to break it down, and it releases what are called casomorphines, which are apparently physically addictive. So giving up cheese, for example, and other animal foods can be working with a physical addiction as well, because in a lot of ways the proteins that are in animal foods, the amino acids have been patterned in a certain way by the animal, and so in order for us, our bodies to use them, it's difficult. And so anything, it's like cigarettes or anything, when it's somewhat toxic, we get addicted to it. And so animal foods are similar. There's a toxic quality to them, so our bodies will get addicted. And I think it's important for us to understand that, and to understand that it's devastating, not only to our own health, but to the health of animals and future generations. It's really important, like giving up smoking, we should be giving up meat, dairy products, and eggs if we want to be healthy, not only ourselves healthy, but spiritually healthy, live in a healthy society, live in a healthy world, because animal agriculture devastates everything.